We've walked on the moon. We've sent probes to the very edge of our solar system, but what if humanity's biggest frontier isn't out there in the stars, but right under our own feet? Today we're going deep into the story of the Kola superdeep borehole, the deepest artificial point on Earth, a place that's arguably more mysterious and harder to reach than space itself.
For decades, Soviet scientists just kept drilling, going down and down, more than 7.5 miles into the Earth's crust. Their whole mission was to go deeper than anyone had ever dreamed of. And then, all of a sudden, they just stopped. They sealed it up and walked away. So the big question we're tackling today is, why? To figure out why they stopped, we've got to go back to why they even started in the first place. And trust me, this wasn't just some geology project. This was a full-blown battle in one of the most intense rivalries in all of human history.
So you've got the United States looking up, right? The space race, aiming for the moon. Well, the Soviet Union decided, okay, you win the race up, we're gonna win the race down. This was about way more than just rocks and data. It was a high-stakes competition, a technological and ideological showdown to prove whose system could conquer the great unknown.
And boy, did they conquer it. After decades of relentless drilling, they hit a truly mind-boggling final depth, 12,262 meters. That's over 12 kilometers straight down. And to this day, it's still the deepest artificial point on the planet. Now, a number that big is kind of hard to wrap your head around, so let's try to put it in perspective. Okay, so we all know Mount Everest, right? The highest point on Earth. Well, if you could take Mount Everest, flip it upside down, and drop it into the Kola borehole, its peak wouldn't even come close to the bottom. In fact, this hole is even deeper than the deepest part of the ocean, the Mariana Trench. That really gives you a sense of the insane vertical scale of what they managed to pull off. But this crazy journey wasn't just about how deep they could go. It was about what they would find. And the things they discovered down there were so unexpected, so wild, they literally forced scientists to go back and rewrite the textbooks. So first up, and this one was a really big deal, they found water. And not just a little bit, a lot of it. Now, you might be thinking, okay, water, so what? But at that time, finding liquid water miles deep inside the Earth's crust was considered absolutely scientifically impossible.
And here's why it was such a shock. The scientific models all predicted that the rock down there would be under so much pressure that it would be bone dry. No cracks, no pores, just no room at all for water. But the Kola borehole proved all those theories wrong. It turned out that water was down there, likely squeezed right out of the rock minerals by the intense pressure. It was a total game changer. And the weird discoveries just kept coming. As they pushed deeper, they found something else that shouldn't have been there: microscopic fossils. We're talking 24 different species of single-celled plankton. And these weren't just any old fossils. They were found nearly 4 miles down, perfectly preserved inside rocks that were over 2 billion years old. Just incredible. But for all the amazing science they were doing, the deeper the team drilled, the more it felt like the Earth itself was starting to fight back. They were going into a totally new territory, a place where the rules of engineering were being stretched to their absolute breaking point. I mean, the challenges they faced were just immense. First, the rock down there started acting weird. It became less dense than they expected, behaving more like a thick plastic than a solid, which made the hole itself start to deform. The pressure was so intense that their drill bits were constantly snapping. But the single biggest issue, the one thing that ended up being unbeatable, was the heat. Their models had predicted it would be about 180 degrees Celsius at that depth. Hot, but manageable. Instead, what they found was a staggering 180 degrees Celsius. That's 356 degrees Fahrenheit. At that temperature, their equipment just couldn't work. The drill bits would fail, the electronics would completely fry. They had literally hit a wall of heat.
Which brings us right back to our main mystery. With all these incredible discoveries and all this momentum, why on earth would you just abandon the project? Well, the answer wasn't just one thing. It was a collision of two massive, powerful forces. All right, first, let's clear up a popular myth. You might have heard the spooky urban legend about the well to hell, right? The story goes that the scientists drilled into some giant cavern and recorded the sounds of tormented souls. It's an amazing story, but that's all it is, a story. The real reason is a lot more practical, but just as final.
That 180-degree heat barrier was simply too hot for the technology they had back then to overcome.
And here's the final piece of the puzzle. Right as they were hitting this technological wall in 1989, a massive political wall was crumbling above ground. The Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, which meant the funding and the political motivation for this hugely expensive project basically vanished overnight. So you had an unbeatable technical problem combined with a complete lack of money. It was the final nail in the coffin.
But to call the project a failure would be to miss the entire point. The Kola superdeep borehole was never really about reaching the center of the Earth. It was about the journey getting there. And wow, that journey taught us an incredible amount.
You know, there's a quote from one of the project scientists that just sums it up perfectly. He said, "Every meter we drilled was a discovery. It wasn't a failure, but a journey that reached its physical limit." They didn't fail. They found the absolute boundary of what was possible in their time, pushing humanity's reach deeper than ever before.
So what did we really learn from this journey? Well, we proved that water exists where science swore it couldn't. We gathered physical evidence that helped confirm our theories about plate tectonics. We got a ton of invaluable data about what the deep Earth is actually like. And just as important, we learned the precise limits of our own technology, setting a benchmark for future generations to one day surpass. So in the end, the Kola borehole wasn't shut down because of strange sounds from hell or some deep Earth monster. It was shut down because of simple physics and complicated politics. It's still there today, a silent, sealed monument to human curiosity and ambition. It answered so many questions we didn't even know we should be asking, but it left us with an even bigger one. If that's what we found in just the first 12 kilometers, what other wonders, what other mysteries are still waiting for us, even deeper below?